Question. I was always under the impression that AUMs grow when disbursals grow. But you all have reported a fall in disbursals both year on year and quarter on quarter. Then how did the AUMs grow?
Yeah, good morning. So actually the AUMs have in fact, as you have rightly said, they have grown, on an yearly basis by about 16%. So 357,000 crore vis-a-vis 307. Sequentially, of course, the disbursements have fell because last quarter was an extraordinarily good, last quarter was an extraordinarily good quarter because of the liquidity infusion which was required because of COVID loans announced by the government of India under the Atmanirbhar scheme. And so about 25,000 crore of loans have been dispersed. So because of that, now there has been a dip in those dispersals in the last quarter. So you see sequentially a decrease. However, on an yearly basis, if you see on a 9-monthly basis, the dispersals are up by about 16-17%. The sanctions are up by 43%. And as you mentioned, the AUM is up. Quarter on quarter, it's because of the extraordinary dispersals in Q2 that.
Okay, we got that. So can you give us an update on what the disbursals could look like in FY22, both in terms of generation as well as renewable energy, transmission, distribution? I mean, overall, what are you looking at in terms of disbursal growth in FY22?
See, over the last 6 to 7 years, REC dispersals, loan book have grown by about 14%. This year, 9 months, the growth is 16%. Next year and the years ahead, we expect a growth of about 10 to 12%, especially now because the order book is quite robust. We have a healthy order book and we expect the capex cycle now to kick in after COVID. That's point number one. And then secondly, as you are aware, in the budget this year, there is an announcement of the scheme, the revamped distribution scheme. So that is also hopefully going to start playing out in the next year. So I think 10 to 12% increase is a reasonable growth to look forward to.
You've given us a cue for the next question. Actually, I was going to ask you, how will the budget proposals for DISCOMs play out? Has any preliminary game plan been thought through? Are you in on it? Can you explain?
Yeah, so this scheme is very different from the schemes that we have had in the previous years. That is DDUGY, the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana, the Saubhagya and IPDS. This scheme is very, very different. Now, having achieved near universal access of electricity in the country, the focus now is actually shifting on improving the sustainability of the DISCOMs, which are the key for growth in the power sector. So this scheme, as the name suggests, it's reforms linked and it is linked to the results. So if you perform, you get financial incentives, and if you do not, then the incentives are decreased to that extent. And it is linked to reforms related to tariffs, reforms related to operations, and so on. So we are confident that this scheme will be a game changer insofar as are concerned.
Okay, just a final question, Mr. Malhotra. What about bad assets, therefore? You all have reported a flat GNPA. Is the Supreme Court dispensation applying to you as well, and therefore would your NPAs been higher if you didn't take that into account?
No, our NPAs have in fact decreased from 19,856 crore, about 1,000 crore, it has decreased. And the reason, therefore, is basically that we were able to resolve one major asset in the last quarter.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, you told us about your asset quality, about your disbursements. What about margins? They fell quarter on quarter. Any outlook on what the margins could look like in the next few quarters?
Yeah, so margins, we are very careful, about the margins because we got to take into account the interest of all the stakeholders. We need to balance them. While on the one hand, we have the shareholders who would be looking for higher interest margins. We also have the borrowers, and it's a competitive field. And most of the loans, you would be aware, are going to assets which are on cost plus basis. So any increase or decrease has a direct impact on the tariff of electricity. And so we are very conscious that while we have, sufficient margins to be able to service the loans and give profits to our shareholders, at the same time, they are not so high that we burden the consumers. Sequentially, you said that it has decreased. Well, that is again, as I mentioned earlier, because of an extraordinary item. One asset, RKM Power Gen, was resolved, because of which we recognized income on Q2 and interest income in Q2, and because of that you see that it has fallen. But again, on a 9-monthly basis, the net interest margin has improved by about 20 basis points. And so last 2-3 years, it has been in the range of 3.5 to 4% in terms of guidance. I expect it to remain over there because the borrowing costs are decreasing. For us,
Mr. Malhotra, we are out of time, sir. Can you just leave us with what is your NPA guidance for the full year?
NPA guidance should be more or less, wherever we are. It should be more or less over there. Slight decrease, a slight decrease. It will not, they will certainly not increase. We are very confident about it, and they would decrease because we are in the process of resolving. There are no fresh NPAs. See, it's a very big thing in times of COVID. There are no fresh NPAs, and we are hopeful of resolving some assets.
We got